Leslie, because this course is a course about transition. I designed it primarily for folks who were still in the space of identifying from transitioning from schoolish to self directed. Now, I would like to say, or I'd like to believe, that we're not always transitioning. There is a point where there's certain things that you're just not going to do, certain shit that's just not a thing anymore, but you're constantly deschooling, right? You're
Hmm.
constantly deschooling, but not necessarily always transitioning. But what we're going to talk about here, a lot of that is really going to speak to that transitional space, the things that show up in that transition. Leslie, I want to start right away with you. When I talked to you about the barriers and the beliefs and the hurdles, all these things, one of the things that was really present for you was the one about caring for ourselves, right? A
Yeah.
child and us. Can you talk to us a little bit about why that sticks out for you and why you feel that's relevant, particularly now?
Well, definitely. I think it's really important now just because of COVID-19 and the way that most of us have been living has completely changed, if not stopped. So, being out and about, all the activities that you might have engaged in previously, whether it's going to the library all the way to attending maybe a Lego robotics club or something like that. All those things have been altered or stopped or changed from in person to something through the internet. And so that I've noticed for my family is it's not just been about the adults in the home needing to adjust and figure out all those new ways of being.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely weighed a lot on my children. So I figured, hey, if my children are dealing with it, I know I'm not the only one. So there's a lot more children that are facing the stress, the stress, the trauma, the sadness, the hiccups that are coming in when we're just trying to learn how to live a new life. And so
Yes.
that was one of the beliefs that as I went through the list again, I was like, that popped out majorly because while I'm a big self-care proponent individually and modeling that for my children, I've noticed in each of them the need to help them find other ways just to care for themselves mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, that have been just different because of this time.
Yes. Yeah. And I really appreciate how you didn't bring up academically in all the leads that you
Oh,
mentioned
oh my goodness. No, like
because
who's thinking about that?
everybody, so many people, and even though like we know what we're steeped in, right? We know a lot of the things that are going to show up because they're present in our circles in a lot
Yeah.
of ways. A big part of this transition out of a schoolish space to a self-directed space, facilitating that, embodying that, all of that, is to recognize the difference between what is being pushed or pressed upon you and what is like what you're being called to do. So
Yeah.
even though it's being pressed and pushed upon you by everything around you to be like, make sure they don't fall behind in their studies, you have to remember also that as a parent, or even as an educator, whatever, however you are in the village, as an educator, it can be a little harder because you're beholden to certain things. But as an adult in that position of power, you got to remember that a part of the work that you can do is to support not just the moment for a child, but the skills, the relationship, the life stuff. And
Yeah.
people can study on and off wherever, whatever. I learned how to study like sophomore year of college, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the emotional stuff,
Yeah.
that shit will stay with you for like decades, decades, decades. So if you're not deliberate about nurturing that, trust and believe that there's something that is missing in that moment for a child that you can do something about that has nothing to do with book learning. Right, Leslie?
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. And I think I'm thankful that that hasn't been the prominent thing in our home. So that's not even on my mind. I was telling you earlier, just the traps that go nicely with the self-care is the learning gaps, the
Mm-hmm.
comparing yourself and your children, and then trying to duplicate the school thing in your home. So that's where I've seen in talking to people the challenges they're having around whether it's the comparison, everyone else is doing this, and I feel like if I don't do this, my child is going to fall behind. Um, and so I put self care above all of those things, because it's like you're saying, these are the skills that they're going to get to carry through the rest of their lives to care for themselves,
Yeah.
regardless of whether they can add today or multiply tomorrow, like regardless of the actual skill sets that you want them to have. Um, Being able to be emotionally well during this time, like that's like key.
Yes. Yes. And I think it's something that a lot of us don't feel like we have the right or the permission, I'm not sure what it is, to hold that space for our young people if they are in conventional education, right? This is why we're